politics.
All right. No more politics. All right. So we're allowing some time for people to come on and jump in. And
You're recording. Good for you.
yep, we are recording, and we're just discussing the future of politics and what might happen, because that will make a difference for businesses. It will be a change in how things function in the future, and it will affect every business out there, not just in this incident where it strongly affected restaurants and entertainment industry and the hospitality industry. And as we'll talk
You
about
log in.
how many people benefited from this environment.
And hey, well, before we get the formal start, all these recordings are about to be up on my website and available for back viewing. So we're working on that for people who can and cannot make every week.
And what is your website?
My website is meyerbusinesslaw.com. They're already up on the Meyer Business Law YouTube page.
Excellent. And they are also available on the First Steps Financial YouTube page from the beginning. I think all of them are up there and available.
Excellent.
So welcome everybody to Powering the Pandemic Pivot. And this is our virtual lunch with the Entrepreneurs Advisory Team. We have Jason Meyer, who's the principal lawyer at Meyer Business Law, which was founded in 2009, and he's dedicated to the legal needs of entrepreneurs and the businesses that they run. And we have Ayesha Hamilton, who is the owner at Hamilton Law, and she focuses on employment law and is the champion for employees. And I'm Alisa. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial, and we help small businesses simplify their processes, organize their financials, and gain insight using technology and strategies. All information that we give out here are our opinions, and the content, this is only for information, and we are not giving professional advice. If you would like professional advice, you are welcome to seek out anybody here. Call us. We'd be more than happy to talk to you. If you have any questions and you'd like us to address anything, we'd be happy to do that. Please put it in the chat, and that way actually everybody can see the questions that are put out there. And first thing we're going to talk about is current events, news you can use. And Ayesha is going to start with some information that she has to give us. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in my usual pessimistic, cautious mode. So the couple of things I'm going to tell you about. So before you take money from the federal government or the NJEDA in this particular case, be very cautious about what are the strings attached. Our Third Circuit Court of Appeals just ruled this week that a company that took a relocation grant from the NJEDA to move their offices from New York to New Jersey has to pay tax on the full $56 million that was given to them, because the NJEDA plan did not specifically limit how much, what the parameters were of the taxable income. So I think that's something that you really have to think about. I don't know if you lost me for a second.
Yeah, your Wi-Fi just went unstable.
Okay, so
do you want to repeat that? Because we missed everything after the $57 million that they took as taxable.
Yeah, so the Third Circuit ruled that if you take this money, am I back? Yeah.
Yes, you're back.
You're back with us. You're moving again.
Oh, no. So the Third Circuit ruled that the $56 million that the NJEDA gave to this company to move their offices from New York City to New Jersey is fully taxable, because the NJEDA plan itself did not limit the way in which that $56 million could be used. And so they said, well, you could have used this for anything. You could have bought yachts. It wasn't directed to be specifically used for the relocation of the offices. So that kind of, that should give you pause to think about, whoa, let me read the fine print. Attorneys like Jason will tell you every time, do not ignore the fine print. You got to read the fine print. And here the Third Circuit Court of Appeals said, yeah, too bad you didn't read the fine print. You're going to pay tax on the full 56 million. Wow. So that's kind of big news, especially in the era now where everybody is reaching out for a grant. Everything we talk about, everything you see in the news these days is all grant driven.
Wait, I'm going to be devil's advocate here. Okay, they got $56 million. If they pay $25 million in tax, they got the rest for free.
That's right.
Would you pay that much to get that much? Would you pay like 25 million to get?
If it was gonna fit your relocation.
If you were expecting, if you didn't use all the 56.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we all work every day to get, 2/3 of what people write a check to us for.
Right.
So sure.
I think as long as you planned, right?
As long as you planned for it.
I think the more interesting question may be whether, let's take PPP money or EIDL money that is supposedly because my company is in distress at this moment. Right. And so we'll have future litigation on whether that is a sufficient limitation. And also it's only forgiven if I spent it on certain things like payroll. So we'll have future litigation is what this means on whether that money is taxable.
So technically,
right.
As it stands right now, it is taxable because the PPP money came in. The payroll taxes go against it. The payroll taxes do not go against your company as an expense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of is still taxable because through normal business, you would take payroll as an expense, and now they're taking that out. And they're arguing about it because the intention was to not have this be additional money, an infusion of money to keep you going, not to make it taxable. And in the situation it stands now,
this is going to be a huge field of litigation now. I presented at a state bar presentation yesterday, and one of the participants asked the question of, I got an EIDL loan. I'm working exclusively from my home now. Can I buy a backup generator with that money?
Ooh.
Interesting question. Right? You're putting your, all of us who had to call Verizon and say, you got to up my FiOS service because we don't have enough bandwidth for 3 different Zoom calls, as you saw. Right?
Well, and I'm distracting from our current events, but a question I have, Alisa, for you is, have you seen anything about the status of the home office deduction? I mean, suddenly everybody is legitimately working in home office.
And Jason,
if they've segregated their space, it wouldn't surprise me to see the IRS just sort of throw up their hands this year and say, home office, yeah, go ahead, fine. There's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
Yeah, they have bigger fish to fry this year.
Yeah.
There won't be, I guarantee for 2020, the ruling will come, next February about what they're going to do because they have a lot more to wade through. The PPP and how that's going to be handled and the expenses, those are going to come first. The people who are going to expense home office are going to be, and again, it may include employees who are working from home, not just people who own the business. Mm-hmm. It's going to be expansive, and it's going to have a lot of, if anybody's like, a tax lawyer, they're going to have so much fun.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Ayesha, you have on here something about a New Jersey gym owner. They opposed the governor's order. I missed this.
They did, and I think it was like a Gold's Gym or something by the shore, and they got shut down. So I've seen actually a lot of news reports. So this is sort of apropos of a conversation we were having maybe a couple of weeks ago about, do you really want to go against the governor's order and go against sort of basic concepts of health and human safety? Don't, because there's going to be legal ramifications to it, and you don't want to end up on the wrong side of that. And then
Yeah.
the final thing I just wanted to mention, because it kind of has the legal community in a gigantic area of flux, is our Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court has issued an order allowing for jury trials to resume. Now, it's going to be very limited jury trials. They're only in a few counties across the state, because there's only a few of those counties that have courtrooms large enough to allow 6 to 8 jurors to socially distance by 6 feet.
Oh,
So
okay. Mm-hmm.
they're also having to outfit these courtrooms with, plexiglass and all of the crazy stuff that every workplace is having to do. But it raises some really significant issues about access to justice. So are you actually going to end up with a jury of your peers when presumably your peers may not have access to a laptop to connect via Zoom, access to a computer to connect to, because all of the initial jury selection is going to be done via Zoom. And then there'll be a small pool of 30 jurors that will be brought into the courtroom for the final jury selection. So is this going to in some way self-select out minorities and more disadvantaged communities? And then what does that say in terms of, are you really getting a jury of your peers? So that's the last I'll say on it, but it's going to be a really sort of interesting issue to watch unfold as we get through sort of phase 2 of the pandemic.
Fascinating.
And you bring up the subject of that barrier of not having a computer, not having internet, and
right. So you're going to have socioeconomic and racial disparities now in who is comprising of your jury pool,
and age discrimination, in the sense that, my mother-in-law, she doesn't even own a computer. She doesn't even have internet. Like she's decided not to ignore it. So you're not going to get older people, or fewer. And that's interesting.
So,
well, that leads me about PPP applications. Woo! That's all we think about. And honestly, they give us agita. So look, they still don't have a ruling. They have a tentative date now of August 10. But as one of my clients said, I don't want to be the first one to file for forgiveness. I said, good. I don't want you to be either. They still don't have anything. Jason's going to update on a lot of other things, so I'm not going to spend much time on news you can use, because Jason has the rest of it. But just so you know, the PPPs are going to be possibly in August at some point, if there's a ruling on many things, and we just don't know. It's still up in the air, but we'll keep you updated.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of stuff still in flux and a lot of things to figure out. For example, hey, as of now, basically, the extension of enhanced unemployment benefits has ended, and people who are counting on that extra $600 a week, which are millions of people, right now don't know whether they're ever going to see that again. And people who are counting on federal ban on certain evictions, that ban is expiring as well, and we're all waiting to see what comes out of Congress. Meanwhile, the Senate and the House have radically different packages. Supposedly all this stuff has to get done by August 1st to avoid there being a gap. But the Senate's at $1 trillion. The House is at $3 trillion. The Senate says we'll give $200 more in enhanced unemployment benefits. The House says keep the $600 going through the year. The Senate is focusing a lot of its attention on things like corporate tax cuts and limited liability for companies bringing employees back, which means reduced protections for those employees and workers. The House is focusing on things like more benefits for schools and for state and local governments. So stay tuned and see what passes and when. In the meantime, go ahead.
I have a question, and I'm going to pose it to both of you. What are the pros and cons that you can think of? And this isn't definitive, of either having the 600 continue or have it decrease to 200. Because I think it's going to be something. I don't think it's going to be nothing. But what are your, do you have any pros and cons either way?
So I will tell you that I represent a significant number of medical practices, so dental practices, oral surgeons, and they're saying that you can't get hygienists to come back to work. So there's a certain concern about, oh my God, I can in somebody's mouth, right? How can I be safe with this? But one of them said, the hygienist actually said to them, I'm honestly making more money staying home, so I will not be back. So what you're going to see now, though, is that balance that we have to strike between, is 200 enough to help you with your standard of living, right? And was 600 too much? Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a prevailing sense of 600 made it with the 700 that you already got from unemployment. You were doing fine every week. So you didn't need to feel the pinch of, but I really need to get back to work. So I think there's, maybe you do try it at 200.
Supposedly, the Senate says that the 200 is a stopgap measure because what they really want to figure out is a way to put in place a 70% of previous income number.
Yes, I did see that too.
And maybe that addresses that problem. I will say, to me, we have proven again and again that giving money to companies and hoping that somehow that fires up the economy and gets into individual pocketbooks, the trickle-down theory has just been disproven on an evidentiary basis again and again. There's an argument to be made in this kind of economy that it's like unemployment, schmunemployment, just put money into people's pockets. And that's what keeps the economy going, and people doing things like, buying services. We have a nationwide shortage on major household appliances right now. Because manufacturing is slower, but demand's also up 6% on major appliances. Now, is that because that's where people are spending their stimulus checks? Yeah, but that's how you keep an economy going. So there's some debate either way. In the meantime, New Jersey's cooking along. The state has added $15 million to the NJEDA Small Business Emergency Grant Pool. So if you have an application pending into that program and you were afraid they ran out of money, they put more money into it. And some of that comes from the federal CARES program. The NJEDA has also announced this week it supported $810,000 in investments into 5 companies through the New Jersey Entrepreneur Support Program. This is a program that I think really deserves attention from the entrepreneurial community. It is a loan guarantee program where the state guarantees up to 80% of new loans or convertible notes made by qualified investors into certain New Jersey companies, not to exceed $200,000 per company. So basically what that means is if you are privately funded through yourself or through other angel investors, even through VCs, you can go to your current investor pool as a source of money and say, hey, extend us a loan, and the state's going to guarantee 80% of the repayment of that loan if something happens to the company. Really taking a lot of the risk out for those investors and providing you with a fresh source of capital to do the kind of innovating we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So that's a program to look for. And then the one other, 2 other pieces of news, the state has now said 34 states are on our hot list of, if you're coming to New Jersey from these states, you need to quarantine for 2 weeks before you enter the general circulation. Basically, this now means every state except New York, New England, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Oregon, Wyoming, Colorado, and South Dakota. Everybody else, you're on our naughty list. And if you're coming to New Jersey, you better find a nice room for 2 weeks. Yeah. How is it enforced? That's not really the issue. The issue is we're trying like mad to keep from winding up like we used to be and like a lot of the country is. And on that one, I will just give my weekly plug for masks. New evidence out about the benefits of masks. New studies showing that they benefit not only the people around you, but they actually do reduce the likelihood of you contracting COVID and the severity of your COVID if you do, because you're cutting down the viral load that you are breathing in. So I will say once again, it's the state guideline: wear a mask when you leave your house, wear it all the time. That's what's going to keep our economy going. And it's like the simplest thing. If everybody in the country just strapped on the damn masks for 6 weeks, we would not be having, we would be where every other developed country and a lot of undeveloped countries are in the world, which is with a flat curve.
Well, I have to tell you, in Amsterdam, my brother lives in Amsterdam part of the year, and they don't wear masks. They're going out to dinner, and they're going to the gym too.
I was just chatting with a guy yesterday who is currently in Stockholm, in Sweden. And he said, they never shut down, but guess what? The rest of Europe will not let anyone from Sweden come through. So, yeah,
That's funny.
they made the poop list too.
Yeah.
Yeah, us and the Swedes.
Yeah. Well, they're not letting anybody into their countries, and that's okay.
Yeah.
The clock on the wall says we ought to move to our theme for the week. So let me kick that off. So our promised theme this week is to talk about innovation, or maybe another way of that is thinking up what your pivot is. Right. The whole thing we're talking about in our series is powering the pandemic pivot. It's reacting to the pandemic as entrepreneurs do, which is, let's make lemonade out of these lemons. How do we take this and not, A, survive it, but B, find a way to grow from it. And that's about innovating a pivot. Now, here's the thing about talking about innovation: come up with your pivot, right? It's really easy for us, I don't know, pundits, advisors to say that, and it's a lot harder to do. I am reminded of the classic Gary Larson Far Side cartoon, where there's a clown on TV, and the clown is looking at the camera, and you can see the cue card being held up to the clown during while he's on the air, and the cue card says, "Tell a funny joke." It's like, that doesn't really help me. I need to know what the joke is, right? So we need to know. It's like, thanks for telling me I need to pivot, but how do I come up with that? So our approach for today is really going to be not just to tell you to do it, but to try and offer you some advice about how to find that pivot and how to make it more likely that you will when you need it, you will have that entrepreneurial spark and know what you should do to shift your business and be ready to act and to use Ayesha's words in our notes, to be positioned to pivot, to put yourself in the right position to move. And how to do that thing, ready, fire, aim, and pivot again. So for my part, let me pass along 5 tips that occur to me and that I've seen, in my experience with my entrepreneurial clients. So tip number 1 is, what you're looking for is a pivot. It's not a moonshot, right? We're not talking about, I'm a sales consultant, I'm a marketing professional, and I will find the cure to cancer. Ideally, we're looking for something that is in your current means of production, with your current market or customers. The restaurant supply company that has shifted to home delivery, of which there are a couple in New Jersey. Sourland Distilleries, Ray Dish gets talked about all the time. He's actually speaking, I think, to the chamber tomorrow. Here's a distillery that moves to making hand sanitizer, right? He already had the ways to extract alcohol and put them into something, and he found a new use for that. What you don't want to be is, for you fans of Monty Python, and I'm dating myself when I talk about Monty Python, but for you fans of Monty Python, the accountant who wants to be a lion tamer, and he says, well, I have the hat. You want to be closer. So you don't need to look far and wide. You don't need to think about total reinvention of your business. You're probably better off thinking about, what's the pivot? What's the adjustment I can make? It's not a moonshot. Number two, I think, remember to look, to consider your values, to consider your mission, to consider what is your passion. I don't think you want to go looking for something that, yeah, I guess it's a business, but I don't really care about it, or it doesn't really serve my purpose. Think about your passion and those moments where you're taking a walk outside because you can finally take a walk outside, or uh, you're binge watching old British mysteries, and you're sitting there thinking. Just think about, why am I in business? What matters to me? What are the customers or the problems that matter to me? And going through that thought exercise will be more likely to lead you to something that you can shift your business to. My third tip is stay connected. You don't have to be the first person. Can you still hear me, by the way? Okay. You don't have to be the first person to think of your idea. For example, you're in some industry, you're in some area of business. This is the time to make sure you are still spending time reading your industry newsletters, looking at other people in your industry on social media, staying connected to your LinkedIn groups for your, for whatever field of business you're in, because somebody else out there is doing what you're doing and they had an idea. And you can now apply that idea with your customers or in your market. And then the other way to stay connected is listen to your customers. Take the time. You've got the time now. I mean, it's really fascinating to me that at a time when we all should be less busy, we're all more busy. There was a headline a few days ago that, like, professionals are simply not taking days off. That, like, no one's taking days off, because in a way everything feels like a day off, and in a way everything feels like I'm not getting to it all. But take the time to talk to your customers, find out what's going on with them, listen to what they say about their needs. Because if you pivot to something involving your current customers, you don't need to do new marketing, you don't need to find new people, you're selling more to the same group, and that's the 80-20 rule about how to grow a business. My tip number 4 would be, do your blocking and tackling to stay nimble. Have your team ready, have your sources of capital ready, stay in touch with your bankers and your investors. Think about things like that NJEDA program or other ways you have access to capital, and have your paperwork ready. Have your processes, your invoicing processes. Thank you, Alisa. Have your invoicing processes up and ready to go. Have your technology, your website, your computers. You want all that stuff up and humming. Your marketing processes, your email list, your email marketing, and of course, yay, your contracts. Do you have an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, a confidentiality agreement ready to roll when you come up with someone you want to partner with? Do you have a way to enter into new contracts with your clients easily? Is your paperwork ready? What I would say about this is, you can't pivot without your dancing shoes on. So make sure your shoes are polished and ready and on your feet. And it isn't that, before you dance, you're going to have to build the dance floor and dig your shoes out of the bottom of the storage closet, right? Get all that stuff ready, so when you have the idea, you can spin and move on it. And my tip number 5 is keep pivoting. Change is the new constant. We don't know what's going to happen. The disease could go up, the disease could go down. We could have a change of administrations or not. It could be a bad flu season or not. We have no idea. What we do know is things are going to keep changing. And so you want to stay light on your feet. You want to keep yourself ready, and you're going to pivot, and then you're going to pivot again, and then you're going to pivot again. And if you accept that as, that's what I do and that's fun, instead of, oh my God, can't things go stable, then you will have a leg up on the rest of the market.
Mm-hmm. And if you need any encouragement about keeping pivoting, just know that in the Depression, which is similar to what we're experiencing with so many people out of work, there were more millionaires created during that time than in any other time in history. So if you think about that, if you wanted that encouragement, also there are, since March, there's 29 new billionaires. So It's out there. It can
Right.
be done.
One
And
of
the
them is not named Meyer. So Alisa, my question to you is, we're at a time where there's just so many pulls on our resources, on our money, right? I've got to manage expenses. I've got to watch my cash flow. My revenue is probably down. I'm trying to support my team, but to stay light on my feet and ready to pivot, do I also need to be thinking about keeping a budget for innovation, or at the very least saying, I've got to keep some ammunition, in the magazine, in storage. I've got to keep my powder dry, to push this analogy way too far, so that when I have that idea, I have the capital to move on it. Is that how you're advising people?
Absolutely. And it's actually how you should always be thinking, not just in this situation. It's something that, and this was, this was a discussion that was going on about what happened during World War II. The government didn't give out stimulus packages. They didn't do that. The businesses that survived during that time, when people didn't go out to eat anymore because they couldn't, because they lost income, because their husbands or sons were in the war and they weren't here, and there was a complete loss of income. They didn't go out to eat. So the businesses that survived that were the businesses that could withstand a period of time that they didn't have income. And the war went on for more than 4 months. We're only 4 months in. So it's something that you need to think about in the long term. If you don't have the money, start looking at your expenses, look what you can cut, try to save some money, put money aside. The smart businesses that before they came into this, they had that nest egg put aside. And you were always going to be thinking, if you're in a company that you want to grow, you should always be thinking about putting money aside. So when that opportunity is presented, whether it's buying another company, taking advantage of increasing the efficiency of the machinery that you're using, whatever it is, being able to take advantage of that innovation that's come along, or if you come up with an idea that you can pivot and you need an influx of cash for it. I can't stress that enough. And as a matter of fact, during the Depression, that was what people who succeeded, and those millionaires, it's how they were created, is because they saw an opportunity, they had the means to do the opportunity, and everything was on sale. And I think that is where this is going to go, is we are going to have commercial real estate's going to get hit really hard. It was already, before this happened, commercial real estate was struggling, and we're gonna see an issue with that happen, where people are realizing everybody can work from home, or at least most businesses, people can work from home, and commercial real estate is going to be very cheap. So if you're going to start a business, it might be actually a really good time to do it. The cost of starting a business is going to be very low, and it's wages are going to be low. You're going to be able to get really, really good people at a great price, because there's going to be a huge amount of people that are going to be out of work, and finding a way to employ them is going to be pretty awesome. Kapu was saying, now's the time to expand our customer base for those that we didn't serve before. And it's totally true. Kapu is an excellent example of someone who's pivoting, and, she's a photographer. She is someone who was hit really hard during this, and she has taken this on and really changed her business and has been able to survive this and grow from it. So, is there anything else you can do? Yeah, you should always keep an eye on what streams in your business are most profitable and focus on those. So you brought up Sourland Spirits. For them, they should be looking at what lines of alcohol. They have several different kinds. They even have like 2 different kinds of gin. Which one sells better? Which one do they make more money on? Focus on that one. So it's got to be more of, where you can make your money and how to decrease those expenses.
Right. And that's the way your customers are talking to you, right? The question is just,
Mhm.
are you listening? And in terms of the blocking and tackling, are you keeping good enough track of what's going on to receive that message? Like
And I
it's
think
it's it's
people
being
are
sent to
afraid.
you. Are you listening? Right.
People are afraid. They're almost paralyzed by that fear, which is why I keep trying to tell them about this has happened before and people have succeeded in this situation. You can too. You just need to be very careful about what you're doing and looking at those things that, Jason was mentioning, those 5 points. Look at those. Use something that's in your wheelhouse, something that you already have that you can, it's not a moonshot, that it's something that it's just a small change that you can take over and do.
I think if you even add in to that small change things that you always wished you had time to do when you were super busy,
Yeah.
like looking at a monthly P&L, like examining in detail, right, your business credit card. Really, the point you made, Alyssa, was right on point and consistent with Jason's messaging, right, is you have to be really analytical and strategic about getting through this nightmare, right? And you can get through it. It's just you're going to have to be really careful, and sort of, we talk about the pivot and we talk about innovation, but don't just throw it out there. Like you have to be strategic about it.
And there are companies that are making new companies. I have a new client that he just started 5 months ago, and he is killing it because he's in the right industry. And I think the point that you made, Ayesha, is to get analytical and don't be afraid of your finances. This is the time to take the time to look at it. If you're ever going to take, time to do it, now is the time to do it. And doing the work now will ensure your survival later on. And it will allow you to create a plan so that you can pivot, so that you can do innovation, so that you can take advantage of opportunities where a company that does the same thing that you do, but they're struggling. You could take that opportunity to say, like, hey, can I buy your company? And it provides you with opportunities that you wouldn't normally have.
I think it's also worth thinking about, not all innovation has to be expensive, right?
No.
There's plenty of ways to innovate your current marketing strategies or your current business plan. It doesn't cost you anything. So if you've always thought about, hey, everybody tells me that to increase my search engine optimization, I need to write a blog or I need to record a video, do it. It doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
You might actually find that those little things that you can set aside a small block of time when you have downtime, when you found that customers aren't coming yet, or you're marketing for a new business area, do those little things. They're free, well, minor cost, and it may help you build the niche that you're looking to build as a part of your pivot.
And Ayesha, the same thing goes for training, right? Sure, you can drop a lot of coin on training if you want, but there are very effective ways to train that cost little or nothing, including just get out there and let your employees hear it from you, which is who they really want to hear it from, right?
I mean, that's the one big proviso I want to throw out there as we talk about innovation and pivoting, right? Is don't forget to bring your team with you, right? It's great for you as the entrepreneur to come up with all of these fantastic ideas. And then even if you've got a team of 5 employees or 2 employees, you need to bring them along with you. They need to feel the pivot as you are feeling. And you can't just sort of say to them, well, I decided that we're going to buy this new software and we're going to implement and it's going to be great, so go figure it out. That is not, you're not setting yourself or them up for success, right? You're going to spend more time and more money in having to replace those employees than just spending the initial time to train them, to bring them along. But as you think about what your next pivot is, right, as you think about how to innovate your businesses and your practices, think about whether your team can handle it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about, all right, well, we're all gonna, I'm gonna give up my lease at the end of the year, and I've decided that we're all going to work remotely because that makes sense in these times, and we've seen it work for the last 6 months, so we think it's possible. Well, does everyone have the technology they need? Do they have the internet bandwidth at home, right? I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying you have to look at whether your employees have what they need to be successful. Have you trained them on the new software? I implemented Asana, right? Elise, I will credit Alisa to my dying day for introducing me to Asana. Fantastic program, right? But I took a little bit of time to figure it out because it's something, I have a little post-it on my desktop at work that says Asana on it, because I need to remember to actually put tasks in Asana rather than just sending my paralegal an email, right? That's not efficient. I need to use the technology and the innovation that I thought, hey, this is going to be great for my practice. But by the same token, I needed to train my paralegal too, right? You need for you and your employees to be on the same page. You hear statistics about how expensive turnover is, right? So as you pivot, make sure that you're not going to be losing money in the long run by setting your employees up for failure.
Yeah.
That's sort of my big takeaway.
Yeah, I totally agree. Speaking about employees, and it's interesting when you are making these innovations, we actually were talking with a client and they have implemented the feel wheel. Do we know about the feel wheel? I didn't know about it either. So it's everybody on your team talks about how they're feeling right then and there when you're having these. So, and I kind of poo-pooed it at first, but I started thinking that was what happened with us. We didn't know how people were feeling. We didn't know how stressed people were. So if you're going to come up with a new innovation, let's go to the feel wheel.
Wait a second. So when you're going to come up with a feel wheel, check with your employment lawyer first. The liability.
Something different.
And give them my card. They should have called Jason first, but their employees are going to be calling me. Yeah. Just be cautious. But that's another thing to think about, right? Is run your idea. It doesn't have to be legal counsel. Just run your idea past somebody else, so that you can, I don't know if the word is crowdsource, but just get vetted with somebody. I come up with brilliant ideas, and then I'll talk about it with someone and they'll be like, oh, well, have you thought about this? And I'm like, oh, you're right. That's
yeah.
That's going to cost $1 million. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But run it past somebody else, because I think innovation is really important. Innovation is what makes, this economy, this society run. It's critical, I think, to your survival. But not every idea is a good idea.
No, and I agree 100%. Having, and you could have a group of mentors or board or whatever you decide to call them, but to run those ideas past them first before you do go to the team.
Yeah. One of them should be a business lawyer like Jason Meyer. And I'm not
Thank you, please.
He's on the panel, right? I mean, you got to call your business lawyer to just say, hey, you're my quarterback. I'm thinking about doing this. What's your thought on that?
Right.
I think that's really, it's a gut check. It's important to do.
Yeah, there's a way. There are ways to ask, and there are ways not to ask. There are ways to loop people in and not. It's part of listening, but you always have to make sure you are asking the question in a way that doesn't lead to more problems. And I think there's a quote, and I always heard it attributed to Harry Truman, potentially about dropping the bomb, but the quote was, "It was a crisis, and I had to do something." Yeah, maybe, but don't go flailing about. And again, it's a pivot, not a moonshot. It's also a pivot, not a flail. Right? I mean, I'm thinking about where I'm moving. I'm doing it with some thought ahead of time. That doesn't mean I don't try it and see how it comes out from a business point of view. And I think frequently for entrepreneurs, the fastest and cheapest form of market research is to put it out there and see who buys it. But
and
that doesn't mean that we're just like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right?
Right, and that's one of the things that, in this type of environment, it's kind of what you need to do, is to throw it out there without marketing research, because we don't have time for it. It really is something that, a lot of, look at the drug companies. They are pushing to get this, and the trials are much shorter because we need it, and because it's appropriate to get it out now and not 3 years from now.
So if you're anything like me, right, I come up with an idea and then I get super excited about it and I just want to execute, right? Yeah. When I, so one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from one of my law school professors. And he says, I can tell reading that brief that you really love this one sentence. Like, you really just love it. Like, I can tell you're like committed to this sentence as a theme. And he said, what I would recommend you do, right, is take your favorite sentence of that paragraph or that point that you're drafting and take it out. Take it out, because you get so emotionally vested with that one sentence. And so I'm not saying don't pivot or don't execute. But if you get really excited about it, put it aside for 24 hours. Mm-hmm. Come back to it. Mull it over. Right? I'm a pull the trigger on things. I see a software, I think it's fantastic, I will buy it, right? And many mistakes have been made that way. but now is not the time. Now is the time not to be stagnant. Mm-hmm. You cannot stall, but you can't jump into the deep end. And
you can be risky with your money.
Yeah, and I think take. I mean, ready, fire, aim. But in the same respect, do take the. I think it pays off for me to take the time and like, okay, let me try and sketch it out. Right. Let me try and outline it on a piece of paper. How would I tell my employees about it? How would I tell Alisa about it? How would I tell my customers about it? Let me go beyond level one and try to sketch it out on paper and go through that thought exercise to sort of, make sure you've thought through that couple levels of contingency before you stake your business on it.
And then the next step, once you've thought it through, is to figure out what financial measures you're going to do to see if there is success or not, and to be able to measure that quickly. That's something to put in place while you're thinking about, is this a viable option? Okay, how would I measure its success?
Right. It may be that you just need, you're looking to increase your sales by 5 or 10%, just sort of get yourself over the hump. That's a different kind of idea and approach than it would be like, I own a restaurant that was all about the in-person dining experience, and now that business is zero, and I've got to redo everything. Let me just say we've got about 10 minutes left. Let me invite our attendees. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat field, and we will watch that. But also, if you have had any experiences on that you think would be useful to pass along in terms of, how you have, met or missed the pivot. Type it in short, and we'll see if we can add it to the discussion by relaying that. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep yakking. I
just have one tip that I really want to share with everybody who is a business owner. There is a report that I love, and it's my favorite. It is the profit and loss by percent of income. So what it shows you is it shows you every expense in relation to your income. So if you made $10,000 and payroll is 10% of that income, 10% of that sale, of every sale, 10% is coming out of that income. It also shows you what percent of the money you're keeping. So whatever your profit is, so you can start thinking along those lines. And especially now when we really need to keep an eye on what expenses are, you may decide that your profit, you're gonna get less of a profit for right now. You're gonna be okay with 10% of total sales, 10% you're good with. So where is the rest of it going? What are you spending your money on? And whatever the largest percentage is, that's where you're spending the most money. So maybe you want to decrease that, but it's a nice way to look at it over time, because you can see, okay, the percentage that I'm spending on my employees is increasing, but my sales are not increasing. It's just getting larger and larger. So the big tip off is, okay, that number is getting larger and it shouldn't be. So if your sales are increasing and you're keeping your wages constant, that number will get smaller and smaller. So it's something to think about. It's an excellent report. It's easily run, actually, in QuickBooks. They actually already have it set up. And it will help you to make decisions on, can I do different things? Can I do a pivot?
To add to that, Alisa, and I know you've talked about this and Jason has talked about this as also, we're all in somewhat of a panic mode, right? What's going to be happening to us? Are we still going to be standing? Are we going to be able to make rent? All of that. The one place that you do not cut your budget is marketing. Don't stop marketing, because you will be standing at the end of this unless you've decided today that, you know what, I'm listening to these three bozos, I'm done, I'm out. I'm going to pivot my career out of my business.
It's not worth being in business any longer if I have to keep hearing them. Yeah.
So if you decided that, yeah, I'm gonna be fine. I have decided that I am going to be fine and I'm going to do what it takes to be fine. You have to keep marketing, because the minute you stop, you're done, right? The minute you stop, somebody else fills that void. So don't cut that portion of your budget. As you're being critical about your expenses, that's not the place to cut.
Right, exactly. It's going to be things that, you really have to see if what's providing you value. I have a couple of franchisees that just purchased right at the beginning of COVID. What a great time to start a business. And they are spending about $2,000 a month on marketing, and they're seeing returns on it. In this market, they're seeing returns on it. So I'm telling you, and I was so happy because one of them has owned a business before, and he's like, absolutely, goes, I plan on increasing my marketing budget. And I'm like, good for you.
Right.
So it's a proven fact that that's what's going to keep you going through this.
And the pivot.
And there's also there are many business cases of the companies that are both aggressive and also really focused on customer service and taking care of their customers and everything that taking care of implicates. That the companies who are successful doing that during periods of crisis get a long tail of benefit from that. They build up a lot of capital with the market, not monetary capital, but sort of reputation capital with the market and with their customers, a lot of period of good feelings for taking care of me now. That will, and that success will persist in better times.
Oh, absolutely.
Let me ask you guys a quick question. I'd like your perspective of it, which is, let's say I've got a company, it's up and running, I have an idea for, a new area I want to go into. Should I go to the effort of putting that new area into a new entity, into a new company? Is it another market? Is it a division, or is it an entirely new venture?
Uh,
It depends on what type of business it is, right? Are you okay with exposing your current concern, right? Your current going business to liability that might
Mhm.
arise out of your new business? I would think, and Jason, you can speak to this too, and Alyssa probably,
Yeah.
you're seeing it from the really practical side of it. But I think you want to keep these things separate, especially if they're quite distinguished from each other.
mhm.
And once you decide to set up a company, it's like a minimal filing fee, couple
New
$100
Jersey.
to a lawyer, like it's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the new venture never takes off, never does anything, you just dissolve it. It's not really that big of a risk to take in just setting up another LLC rather than exposing your current business to some kind of new exposure that.
Right, and that exposure is not just sort of, someone runs it, someone gets into an accident, there's that kind of claim, or something goes wrong with the product. It's simply things like, hey, it doesn't make it.
Yeah.
I tried a new venture and it doesn't make it, and I've left people out there, suppliers that the company owes money to. Can they go against the bank account of my up and running established business?
Yeah.
And if you make them separate companies and you're faithful to them being separate companies, well then you have some protection against the creditor of one going after the other. So from that point of view, it reduces your liability. But at the same time, if I get into issues like I've got to open a new set of books,
Mhm.
what about my employees and who they're actually working for, and how careful I have to be about that? To me, that those operational issues are on the flip side.
Right. And those all have expenses associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to see, if this new innovative idea that you have, will it be able to support those things? Does it make sense for the startup costs? Is it a shot in the dark, or is it something that you've thought about, that you've mulled over for some time? And I think all those things you need to take into account before you decide to do anything.
And Ayesha, I can't just have my employees of company A start doing work on the side for company B without putting something in place, right?
No, and as a lawyer, right, we have rules of professional conduct that restrict what types of business you can do through your law practice.
Right.
So you want to be extremely cautious about your professional restrictions. If you're an accountant, if you're a medical practice, you've got to be really careful about not only commingling funds, right? You need to have separate bank accounts and separate setups, but also just commingling principles. You also, I think, have to think about, am I diluting the branding of the successful company to add in, oh, and by the way, I practice law, but I also cook meals for elderly people. I don't. Nobody wants my cooking. But
how do you even put those two together? Like no, but I feel like I agree with you. It totally dilutes your message, and it dilutes your message, and it almost makes you lose credibility.
Absolutely. And that's I think another really, really important key to think about. I know a lot of estate planning lawyers who are also certified financial planners.
Mm-hmm.
There's a synergy there that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of accountants who are also certified financial planners or investment advisors.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of things make sense. So if you're having, an idea about, hey, all I've been doing thus far is real estate sales and purchases, but I can talk to people about real estate investing, those types of things make sense, right? Look for stuff that actually has a synergy. If I'm the lawyer who bakes cookies, I don't know.
Yeah, the lawyer radio disc jockey thing didn't really work out for me.
Yeah.
Hey, a minute left. I want to get in a plug for the two of you. So if you like this, you'll love Thursday mornings with Alisa and Ayesha. They're doing a webinar series weekly at this point for women entrepreneurs and the issues that women entrepreneurs may face uniquely. I listen in and I learn a lot, and it's great fun. And I'm really glad that I don't have to be as presentable as they are at 8:25 in the morning. So Thursdays at 8:25, you can get information on their webinar. And tomorrow's topic is financial mistakes that we made personally and in business, and sharing that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we can't wait to bear our mistakes publicly.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It's going to be great. We're going to talk about it, especially because, you know, I'm in the financial industry, so it's super good.
No
And
distance.
And the three of us will be back in 2 weeks, because we do this every 2 weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks, Wednesday at noon on August 12th. And our theme then will be winding down. And there's an elephant in the room in all these conversations. And the elephant in the room is, what if I'm not going to make it? These are tough times. What do I do if I think I'm not going to make it? What should I be doing now if that is a true fear, as I take a cold look at the numbers? And we'll get into that in 2 weeks on August 12th.
All right. It's great seeing everybody.
Thank
Have
you.
a good 2 weeks, and we'll see everybody back here.
Take care, everyone. Thanks
All
for
right.
coming.
Bye.